Now, people like Jamie Oliver are going to try and tell you that prisoners have got it easy, that their menus are fat with choices of luxury items and things that prisoners really shouldn't be eating. But the reality of the situation is, on paper, it looks okay. Even on the plate, sometimes it looks edible. But prison food is made with the lowest quality ingredients by people who don't give a fuck. By catering managers who have got budget on their mind rather than luxury quality bougie food items. So I thought I'd do a quick talk about prison food and what it actually boils down to. So when you first come into prison, it's like nothing you've ever seen. So you're going to go into like a canteen area. You don't sit out like a lot of prison TV programs and films and stuff show the inmates sitting out and eating on tables. Now that doesn't happen in the most part across the UK. It's just too hectic. So what they like to do is they like to give you your food and get you behind your door so you can the staff can go off for their lunch. Now I'm not saying that doesn't happen in every prison. In Dartmoor we used to eat on a little table, in the middle of the room, and so that was on the resettlement wing, so there was a lot less of us on the wing, but you used to be able to eat out down there. So on the whole, you're going to go into this little canteen area. It's just a little walk through, sort of in one door out the other, and there'd be a whole bunch of lads. They try and cram as many servery lads in there as they can. So you'll have sort of like 8 people back there trying to serve food, and there'll be a number of choices ranging from they're numbered. So it's like 1 to 6 normally, or 1 to 5. Number 1 is normally always the vegetarian, it's like vegan option. So it's quite basic, even within prison food, it's quite basic. So yeah, it's got nothing in there for those guys. That's the kind of, also if you forget to put your menu in, or if you're new on a wing or on a prison, they're going to put you on ones a week, and that's what that is. It's basically the basic food. And then your options between sort of 2 and 3 are going to be your meaty kind of choices. So you'll always have like a pie in there, or sausages occasionally, or something else. There used to be it was almost like the turkey Twizzlers of prison. They were kind of these brown things, but they called them chicken, and it came in kind of like it almost looked like roadkill. It was in like a long strip, and it was thick and brown, and it was like jagged, like the top of a castle roof, if you imagine it, kind of had up and down and up and down. And my mate said to me, he goes, "When have you ever seen brown chicken?" Now, I imagine it's just because it's that reconstituted shite, and then it's added full of additives and flavourings and stuff. But yeah, they used to serve up that shit as well. And it looks like food, but again, it doesn't cut it really. There'll always be potato with every meal, so lunchtime and evening meal. You get it sliced, jacket, roasted, sautéed, boiled, chipped, however you can imagine it. You've got potato with every meal. So yeah, that's what we got to. We got the first one, then we got 2 to 3 and 4 is your meaty options. 5 again is going to be something like a salad or something a bit healthier, or pastas, something like that. But again, we're not talking about lovely food. It's like army kind of canteen in a big silver tray, and it's just slopped onto your plate with a silver ladle. So yeah, 5 will be something a bit healthier. And then 6 is normally like sandwiches in the evening. So they'll make you up a couple of sandwiches. A couple of my mates, because I used to work in the prison kitchen as well for a bit. My brother was was running the kitchen, and he managed to get me a job up there. And there was our 2 mates were making the sandwiches, and they used to just sitting there fucking around all day, sort of throwing bread and butter at each other. But yeah, he used to sit there making hundreds of sandwiches, and at the end of the day, we used to be able to go back and make our own sandwich. So you could take a sandwich back to your cell in the evening. Just the lads who worked, in the late shift in the kitchen. And I used to, because obviously I'm always a grafter, I used to just make up sandwiches, different flavours, and then go back and sell them on the wing. People obviously want that, want something a bit different. I'd make up requests, and go around and get paid for making sandwiches on the wing. Fucking what else? All right, so yeah, that's the main options of the food. And like I said, I used to work in the prison kitchen, so we'd get up in the morning, we'd go off to the kitchen and get cooking on the food. Now, a lot of it is just literally warm up, so it'll come in packets and trays and stuff. And literally, all you have to do is take it out of the box and just throw it in these big ovens for 90 minutes before food. You have to cook the sex offenders' food as well. Now, a lot of that food gets dropped on the floor, and gets messed with before it heads down to the wings. Don't worry, they do suffer with every mealtime. And essentially there isn't much that actually gets made. We used to make stir fries and stuff, and maybe a curry every now and then. After a little while in the kitchen, it was my job to do the vegetarian stuff. So because there was so little of it, there'd only be like 30 or 40 portions of it. You'd make it up by hand, kind of, and it used to be quite nice, because you'd actually get to do some proper cooking and things. And I learned how to cook a lot of dishes in there, because bearing in mind I came into prison at 18. So I learned how to cook a whole load of dishes that I hadn't learned how to cook. And it also gave me the skill of, being able to cook en masse as well. So I learned a few skills in the prison kitchen, but it did get you just to show you that, a lot of the times when the chickens were coming in, the lads would be cutting boils off them and stuff, and, the tumours and things, and it was gross. All the eggs, no egg in prison will ever have one of those little lion marks on it. God knows where they fucking come from. Yeah, that's... It's it's not UK fucking standard. Let's be real. When I was working in the bacon factory just recently, I had to fucking... Sorry, just changing subject altogether. If people who haven't heard, during the pandemic, I lost my job and I had to quickly find another one. So I ended up working in a bacon factory, and the fuckers because they basically slice up all the meat and then they put it in the freezer. And anything that hasn't been sold straight away, they fucking repackage it and they fucking give it a new sell-by date and they fucking pass it on. And some of this stuff we were having to repackage was fucking green as fuck, and they were even wiping it down with fucking wipes, like antibacterial wipes, because it was so minging, and then fucking repackaging it. It was gross. And even one of the foreigners in there was asking, where the fuck is this going? And they said they send it to the prisons and to the army. I was like, oh, fucking hell. Yeah, I hope it's not our army. It's their army. But anyway. So so I was working in the prison kitchen for a bit. Now, obviously, the prison kitchen is a good source of food, and I was always weightlifting. So I was always trying to get as much food in me as I could, so I could grow. And they used to have eggs up at the prison, up at the kitchen. So you'd always try and get back after lunchtime, because you could basically eat whatever was left over up there. And so I'd always try and rush up there, get as many eggs or chicken as I could, so I could get the protein in me. And I remember this one time I got up there and there was like 6 eggs left, 6 boiled eggs. So I scooped them all up, and the lad next to me was like, oh, shouldn't we split those, 3 each? And I just kind of looked at him and was just like, no, I need all 6. Now, that moment in time sticks in my brain, because it's really unreasonable of me to do that. And if I was on the outside, if I was, in real life now, I would have been just like, yeah, sure, here you go, here's your 3, I'll have 3, we're both sound. But I needed 6 eggs, really, for the adequate amount of protein that I needed in that meal. And I couldn't see that, I had my 6 eggs. I got there before him. There was nothing in me that was going to share these eggs with him. And to this day, I still think of that as a moment of just like, I don't even recognize the person I was in prison who could have done that, and just slept soundly, walked off, and just, when I talk about going into the servery where you go and get your food, the staff let, half the wing out at a time, and everyone comes down and you end up queuing up for food. Even at the end of like fucking association time on Saturday, they call food, so everyone queues up and, starts waiting for the food. Now, I got to the point where I was, I'd always say I was like an alpha on the wing. So I wouldn't bother even queuing up for food. I would just walk and go straight to the front of the queue and just push in and just walk in. Now, I probably pissed so many people off by doing that, because there's a whole bunch of people in the queue who are just going backwards essentially, as people like me just come and push in and fucking walk through. Because I was quite big and muscly and I used to kick off and fight all the time. And then I think people just didn't fancy it, like they just used to sit there and screw up their little fist and wait while 3 or 4 lads pushed in front of them. But yeah, that's something you've got to deal with as well. Now, so when I'm talking about prison food, and even the act of just going to get your food at lunchtime and in the evening is going to put you in conflict with people to the point where you could end up rowing and fighting, and you're butting heads with people constantly because you got fucking knobheads like me coming and pushing in, not thinking about the 20-30 people behind them waiting, and the day that they're having, and the fact that they could be a quite unstable, violent criminal. And you've got some jackass like me just coming in and pushing in. Yeah, it's just one of those things. It's literally like a pissing contest in prison, and if you're willing to do it, then that's that's what you do. And I was willing to do it, so yeah, in every aspect, I was always in a pissing contest, So fucking yeah, I've told this story before on a separate podcast when I was interviewed by a comedian to talk about prison life, and it's a really interesting podcast that he does actually. I'm going to put the link in the description, as I've done with lots of my diary podcasts. He's interviewed so many different and interesting characters in prison, so yeah, definitely give him a watch. I'll put, like I say, I'll put the link in the description, and it's fantastic, a fantastic listen. Conversations with Criminals it is. So yeah, I told this story before on his podcast when he came to interview me, and it's basically, it didn't happen with me in my prison, but it happened with my brother in the Fern. And one day on the servery, they're serving, there's a choice of dessert in the evening sometimes, and you'll get this kind of duff, they call it, which is just a thick sponge, it's a sponge cake made from a ready mix, and custard, and it's always called duff, and then you'll have like a rock cake as well, or sometimes you get some fruit, something like this. Now this lad, he didn't want a rock cake or the duff, he wanted both, and that wasn't the choice, and the guy behind the server—he's got to tell him no, you can't have it. And so this guy's taken offence, there's a bit of an altercation, he's kicked off a little bit, and he's gone off to his cell and come back with a weapon and jumped over the servery and stabbed the guy serving the cake up, and he's ended up killing him over a fucking dessert. And it doesn't really matter what these guys did in their outside life. They may have both had families, may have both they might commit quite petty crimes, committed quite serious crimes, but their lives came down. One of them's now spending the rest of his life in prison, and the other one's dead, all over a bit of duff and custard. So these are the kind of intense prison situations that you get. When on the outside would you ever want to kill someone over a fucking bit of cake? I mean, I know I know it gets pretty hairy in that Pret a Manger sometimes, but it's it's never that bad. But it's so prison is just an intense, crazy situation sometimes, and it's not often, but it does happen. You see people on more than more than one basis trying to want to fight people behind the servery because they think they're getting mugged off for the food. Now, I've worked behind the servery before, and I've had to dish out the chips on Chips Day, and that always used to be my favourite day in Exeter Prison. I don't know if it's still the same, but they always used to serve pizza and chips on in Exeter, and that was when I'm talking about prison food being fairly shit, that was okay actually. That was pretty good that day. And they used to actually make their own pizzas in Exeter for a while, but they buy them in now. But the pizzas they make weren't bad actually. And you used to go down there and grab your pizza and chips. And sometimes if you knew the guy behind the server, you get a decent portion of chips. And if you didn't know him, or if you're a bit of a bellend, then you get a fucking stitch-up portion, which would basically be like 6 or 7 chips on your plate. And then you just watch the person in front of you getting a scoop, and then maybe another half a scoop thrown on top of that. And then this guy just looks you in the eyes and gives you like 6 chips. And you're faced with a choice then of like, do I jump over the counter and beat him to death, or or do I walk off to the cell, and think about why? I'm the guy getting 6 chips today. But it's you know, I've worked behind the counter, and you know, you get 90 portions of chips for everyone, and that's it. And you know, the gym, the kitchen staff work out the portions, so it's basically a fucking level scoop of chips. And bearing in mind, when the trolley turns up, the servery boys rinse it anyway and put in like 3 or 4 portions of chips on their own plate. So you're already down. So you're already behind when you've got to start dishing out these fucking things. And yeah, more than one person's want to murder me over a plate of chips before, but luckily I've made it through. So yeah, that's, you know, that's prison food. I remember when I came out of prison, and it's often the same. You know, you try and go out for food, and everything's just too rich. You know, your stomach hurts after you've eaten, and you know, it's just, everything's really rich when you come out of prison. You can't eat loads. I remember just a simple portion of like curry I think I had a curry when I went to a pub when I came out of prison for one of my first meals, and I couldn't even get through it. And you know, prison, you know, pub portions aren't that massive anyway. And yeah, I couldn't even finish it because it was just more rich than I'd been used to. Prison food on paper looks good. You know, it's got all the right names, but there's just zero nutrition in it. It's, you know, the worst sourced food for the lowest budget. So Jamie Oliver can rest assured knowing that, you know, we are suffering eating that food. Don't worry. When it looks on paper that we're getting good stuff. Because I remember when we was in Portland, one time they gave us kind of a survey and just said, look, what food would you like? And obviously everyone put down like kebabs, you know, this, that, and blah, blah, blah. And they, to be fair, you know, when the next like menu rotation came out, they kind of worked with it, you know. So when we said kebabs, they gave us a pita bread and maybe like 2 slices of kebab meat, you know, with a bit of salad, you know, which when I'm saying salad, it's a tomato and a bit of old lettuce. So, you know, when you see that on a Friday night, you know, prisoners are getting kebab and chips, it's not what you think. It's what they've managed to put together from what you've asked them to do on, you know, fucking 20p a head. So, yeah, prison food looks good, tastes shit, will probably make you ill. I've even been told that it might even been spiked because why do prisoners always feel so tired after the food? I think possibly because it's just so shit. A lot of prisoners fucking stuff up on bread. You used to get a lot of, you know, if the loaf of bread is left alone, people will be walking off with like 15 slices of bread. And it's just because you want to stuff up on food. Now, I'll give you a little prison hack before I go. Obviously, you know, you've got to supplement your meals. Now, they started doing all the happy shopper foods, so that was good because you started getting like £1 chocolate bars that weren't, you know, too bad from the canteen. But noodles, and everyone in the comments I know is going to know this. Noodles is a fucking godsend in prison. You can get little 30p packs of noodles, boil them up, and just, you know, I used to go through so many, maybe 3 or 4 of them a day sometimes. Just to try and fucking get some sustenance. Tuna, mackerel, and like I say, as much chicken as you can get from anyone you know in the kitchen. Yeah, you might just make it through. But yeah, tuna and noodles is probably one of the dishes that you take out of prison, and you probably still eat. I don't know how many of you have ever been in prison, but I bet there's a lot of you that still eat tuna and noodles when you're fucking bored. So yeah, prison food. Don't try it. Thank you. See you later.